Many ancient myths and legends are scary enough in concept alone, so what happens when filmmakers use their movie magic to bring them to life? What does a murderous incarnation of Saint Nick look like? How much damage can a colossal Nordic troll do? Let's take a look at the scariest mythology in horror movies. The Wendigo isn't new to cinema. See 2001's Wendigo, Dark Was the Night, or even video games like Until Dawn. Though it's never been as gloriously realized as it is in Scott Cooper's 2021 film, Antlers. Carrie Russell stars as Julia Meadows, a schoolteacher who, despite grappling with her own latent trauma, takes an interest in student Lucas Weaver. She suspects that Lucas is being abused by his father, though what she discovers is considerably more terrifying than she could have imagined.
We found a part of a man in the woods today.
Part of the man?
I guess the other half was found in the mine.
As it turns out, both Lucas's father and brother are Wendigos. Cooper goes to great lengths to ground the Wendigo myth in its original form, a cannibalistic Native American spirit that jumps from person to person, perennially hungry. Gory, gooey, and wearing the fleshy face of its most recent victim, it's nightmare-inducing. The Hole in the Ground isn't A24's best work. It certainly doesn't hold a flame to Hereditary or The Witch. Nonetheless, it's still a legitimately frightening horror movie that captures the spirit of European folklore. The Hole in the Ground follows Sarah O'Neill, a single mother who moves to the Irish countryside with her son, Christopher, in a bid to escape Chris's father. There, she and Chris both stumble across the titular hole in the ground. After Chris wanders from the house one night, Sarah suspects that what returns may not be her son.
Where were you? Chris, where were you?
Here.
No, you weren't.
She's right. Chris is now a changeling. A popular legend throughout most of Europe, a changeling is believed to be a fairy, left in place of human children. They generally make the swap to cause mischief and mayhem, and, as in Chris's case, sometimes arrive with homicidal intentions, a clear allegory for the impact that Sarah's abusive ex may have had on Chris's psyche. The myth is terrifyingly rendered by director Lee Cronin. You'll be questioning the identities of your own children for weeks to come.
Good night, Mummy.
Good night, sweetie.
Santa Claus is conventionally depicted as a jolly, happy fellow, but the people behind Finnish horror comedy Rare Exports present a very different vision. Exceptionally conceived by writer-director Jalmari Helander, Rare Exports follows Pietari, a young boy embroiled in the middle of an excavation of Joulupukki, the Finnish folkloric figure responsible for modern-day conceptions of Santa Claus.
I can proudly say that we are standing on a sacred grave.
Unlike jovial Saint Nick, Joulupukki is said to be a monstrous horned beast, one who whips bad children and boils them in a coffin. The Rare Exports rendition is little more than an emaciated shell of what he once was, though his legion of homicidal elves proves to be a considerable match for everyone involved. A bloody good time, Rare Exports is one of the most distinct Christmas horror movies ever made, and it has an exceptional monster at its center. La Llorona, also known as the Weeping Woman, is a central figure in Mexican folklore. Though early texts identify her as a pre-Hispanic figure, her story involves an indigenous woman who drowns her two children in a river after their father abandons her. She then drowns herself, but finds herself unable to enter the afterlife and is doomed to roam the riverside in search of her children. The myth has been adapted frequently as of late, including into a standalone entry in the Conjuring cinematic universe. However, the best modern incarnation is found in Jairo Bustamante's Guatemalan horror film, aptly titled La Llorona. Replete with political trauma, the movie involves a Guatemalan dictator and his family, locked away in their country home, while patriarch and former ruler Enrique Monteverde is on trial for genocide. As the days move on, several family members report sightings of a weeping woman. The scares only arrive in earnest in the film's final few minutes, and those wary of slow-burn horror won't find a lot that works here, but for those with patience, La Llorona is a tremendously frightening foray into generational trauma with a sensational specter at its center. 2020's Underwater leads us down into one of the deepest places on Earth, the Mariana Trench. Kristen Stewart's character, Nora Price, is one of several workers at an underwater drilling facility who are forced to leave after an earthquake threatens the stability of their quarters.
On a scale from 1 to 10, how bad's my rig?
10.
In their desperate bid to escape, they discover that something is hunting them, picking them off one by one. In the third act, these antagonists are revealed to be Cthulhu and the Deep Ones, central figures in H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos, a form of contemporary mythopoeia, myths that originate in a fictional literary universe. Cthulhu is no less identifiable than the fairies or banshees of yore. Lovecraft's works have had a profound impact on the horror genre, and it speaks to Cthulhu's perennial recognition that a mid-tier studio genre feature used him as a central antagonist. Underwater, at the end, amounts to Kristen Stewart versus Cthulhu. It doesn't get better than that. The Hallow is a tense, evocative, genuinely frightening, and criminally underseen creature feature rooted in rural folklore. Adam Hitchens is a conservationist who moves to a remote Irish village with his wife Claire and their young son Finn. The locals aren't too happy they've moved in, and as Adam scours the nearby woods for fungal samples, he encounters several curious sights, including animal carcasses covered in strange substances. Soon, the legend of the Hallow is revealed.
Belongs to the Hallow.
The Hallow.
The good people. Fairies. Banshees. Baby stealers.
Yep, these creatures of Irish folklore have plans to steal baby Finn. No one ever listens to the token lore suppliers in these horror movies, do they? Never constrained by the film's low budget, the creatures in the Hallow look excellent, and the script wickedly subverts several typical horror movie tropes. It's a sensational genre outing with some truly vicious fairies at its center. Writer-director Andre Overdahl simply doesn't get enough credit. Despite having works like Troll Hunter, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and The Autopsy of Jane Doe to his name, he is curiously absent from most conversations about contemporary horror maestros. It's a shame, especially in the case of Troll Hunter, one of the most exhilarating and wildly inventive found-footage movies from this century. Students from Volta University College seek to film a documentary about Hans, a notorious bear poacher. However, when they secretly follow him into the woods one night, they discover what he's really hunting: trolls. In Norse mythology, trolls are described as monstrous beings who dwell in isolated caves, forming small family units while being generally hostile to humankind. They're often said to be both ugly and colossal. The trolls in Overdahl's film are no different. They appear in the distance, towering over the characters. When they need to, they flip over vehicles and chase down jeeps. They're terrifyingly and gorgeously rendered, and the found footage aspect keeps them frightening without ever shattering the illusion. Troll Hunter is a hoot and a half, a pure adrenaline rush of mythic monsters and blockbuster action. We highly recommend it. Under the Shadow is another myth-centric horror movie that, unfortunately, never got the credit it deserved. Like Antlers, it inserts an ancient monster into a deeply socio-political text, using a distinct cultural context to augment its central menace. Babak Anvari's Persian-language directorial debut follows Shadeh, a mother and former medical student living in post-revolutionary Tehran. Unallowed to continue her studies because of her political affiliations, she stays in the city with her daughter Dorsa, despite the objections of her husband, who has been consigned into military service. After new neighbors move in, a missile crashes into the building, and all manner of spooky goings-on are reported.
Have you heard any strange noises in and around the building lately?
Shadeh is told the legend of the Djinn, spirits in Islamic mythology that, while sometimes benevolent, are often said to be responsible for misfortune and death. Anvari uses the myths to maximum effect, delivering searing social commentary on womanhood in Tehran while delivering the expected supernatural scares. There are several noteworthy jolts, and the ending is all-out djinn-tastic. Under the Shadow is the rare political horror film that delivers both commentary and scares in equal measure. Writer-director Michael Dougherty's Krampus had a lot to live up to. His long-delayed Trick or Treat had since become a cult classic, and with Krampus, audiences were eager to see whether lightning might strike twice. The cast looked great, with the likes of Toni Collette and Adam Scott leading the charge, and early promotional material promised something wickedly dark. Upon release, though, expectations were tempered. While critics called it good, gory fun, Krampus never really hit as hard as everyone expected it would before its release.
Get the fire extinguisher!
That's a shame, because Krampus is an incredibly well-done holiday horror extravaganza. The titular monster himself is masterfully realized, a practically rendered behemoth with massive tusks and a fur-lined robe, all wrapped in an assemblage of chains and bells. That image itself is worth the price of admission alone, though Krampus also delivers an exceptional modern take on an ancient myth.
And that night, in the darkness of a howling blizzard, I got my wish.
Krampus, according to Austro-Bavarian folklore, was the anti-Santa Claus, a horned monster whose role was to scare misbehaving children during December, whipping them with birch rods for their misdeeds. Krampus respects his legend, turning Krampus into a genuinely unsettling presence, summoned to punish a family that's lost its holiday spirit. With a league of monstrous toys and elves in tow, Krampus is uncompromising in its commitment to visceral, playful holiday terror. We definitely recommend that you add it to your annual stack of holiday flicks. Netflix often has a penchant for dropping new movies with little to no fanfare. Sometimes these titles take off, securing a place in the top 10 for several weeks and cementing themselves as movies to remember. Other times they evaporate as soon as they premiere. The Ritual is one that defied the odds and became one of Netflix's preeminent horror hits when it launched on the platform in 2018. With strong reviews and a terrifying central foe, it was subversive, unexpected, and defiant of expectations. A group of 4 men hiked the Kungsleden Trail in northern Sweden to honor a friend who was killed in an attempt to thwart a robbery. The survivors are racked with guilt for their failure to intervene, and while it's bad enough that the surrounding woods incite hallucinations and ritualistic nightmares, it gets considerably worse when they discover a Jötunn has been stalking them. This Jötunn is an ancient godlike entity that descended from Loki. That's a twist, as mythology says that the Jötunn are actually the Norse gods' early ancestors. A towering monster with an elk-like body, skeletal head, and human-esque hands, the Jötunn is a terrifying foe, one the isolated cultists in the Ritual have been worshipping for generations.